Pascual Hernandez has been fishing these waters for as long as he can remember. For years, he could support his family using only a hook, a line, and some bait. But that was back when fish were plentiful, before changes to Lake Atitlan's ecosystem saw his catch getting smaller and smaller.
This is
the size of the fish that we often catch these days, but it's really hard to sell one this small. Normally people buy fish that weigh at least half a pound. They don't want one that doesn't have any meat on it.
Pascual has seen a day's catch shrink from 14 pounds to just 2 or 3. But while he can no longer afford to fish full-time, he considers himself lucky. He's found other work locally. Unemployment has driven other fishermen away.
Many of my friends have migrated to countries, like the United States, to find work in order to support their families.
Pascual and hundreds of other fishermen are on the front line of a crisis threatening one of the world's most beautiful lakes. For decades, raw sewage from the towns ringing the lake and agricultural runoff have flowed into Guatemala's Lake Atitlan. But with no outlet, the contaminants have had nowhere to go. Finally, in 2009, the lake struck back. A type of algae called cyanobacteria turned the once crystalline waters into a foul-smelling soup. Shocked by the algae bloom, lake residents tried to remove the scum using whatever tools they had. But it took months for the cyanobacteria to sink back to deeper waters, and even longer for people to forget what they'd seen.
I felt sick. It was just horrible to look at it.
Margaret Dix has been studying the iconic lake for decades. She's one of the key scientists investigating why the blooms are happening and how to stop them. But despite having sounded the alarm back in the 1990s, the contamination has only gotten worse.
The lake has not improved. Sewage keeps coming in, the population keeps increasing, the amounts of nutrients are increasing, which means that the possibility of blooms in the future is increasing.
Scientists now fear the cyanobacteria could mutate and produce toxins, threatening the health of tens of thousands of people who live around the lake. But the former head of a government agency charged with protecting the lake says dangerous pathogens in the water already pose a major risk.
There are people drinking contaminated water from Lake Atitlan every day. They're getting sick and possibly dying from this. And they have no alternative source of drinking water. It's not right that people get sick in a place with abundant resources and a multi-million-dollar tourism industry.
Romero singles out one of Lake Atitlan's only functioning wastewater treatment plants, a project he opposed. Despite a $2 million price tag, the plant only treats half of the town's homes and businesses. As elsewhere around Atitlan, the rest of the human waste ends up in the lake.
The municipal governments here do whatever they want. There are laws, there are resources, there are institutions. There are people who are legally obliged to find solutions, but nobody does anything. People continue to get sick. The lake deteriorates, and the situation is becoming fatal.
But the contamination of Lake Atitlan has other consequences. As one of Guatemala's top tourist destinations, visitors bring tens of millions of dollars into the indigenous communities that dot the lakeshore. It's a lifeline in one of the country's poorest regions. But cyanobacteria is bad for business. When the last big bloom hit, tourism plummeted. Rosalinda Tai says she's still feeling the crunch. She and a dozen other women run a cooperative that makes and sells hand-woven products. But these days, the group struggles to keep their store open, something Rosalinda blames on the pollution.
We've had big problems because there aren't as many visitors or buyers. We live off our crafts. The women here are the ones who bring money into the house to pay for our children's school.
Stories like this give an added urgency to the research trips Margaret Dix and her students make every month. The team takes samples at various points and from different depths around the lake. The water's measured for things like oxygen content and electrical conductivity. But the visual tests can be the most revealing.
All these filaments are lingvia, and then the dots are microcystis. There's probably lots of zooplankton in there as well.
So what does this tell us?
This tells us that we have lots of limbia, lots of cyanobacteria in the lake.
These investigations are helping scientists better understand what activities damage Lake Atitlan the most.
But whether it's deforestation, soil erosion from building sites, clandestine garbage dumps, or the overuse of government-subsidized agricultural chemicals, stopping the pollution is proving difficult.
The director of the Government Lake Authority is confident that's changing. Most towns have solid waste facilities, and there are plans to build more treatment plants. But it's the threat of fines and legal action against local government officials and businesses that could also help Lake Atitlan recover.
The application of the law and prosecutions are things that have never been tried. I can't tell you whether we'll be successful or not. It will depend on the effectiveness of the justice system, but we're going to keep at it until we get results.
Some residents have grown tired of waiting for the government and big NGOs to make good on their promises and are working from the bottom up. Juan Manuel Chavajay is a member of the Sutuhil Maya, an indigenous group who once called Lake Atitlan the belly button of the world. He believes the only way to save the lake is by reclaiming ancestral spirituality and sharing that knowledge with those who will inherit Atitlan.
We have a serious problem with our mother lake. She's dying. With this ceremony, we aim to work with the law of attraction to heal the lake. As Maya people, we've seen many bad things. Colonialism, 36 years of war, and now globalization. What sustained us throughout this time is our spirituality. It's very clear that the children are the future, but that future must start now.
After the ceremony, the children celebrate, and in Juan Manuel's words, play with the lake. Proof that there's still a chance for one of the world's most beautiful lakes. David Mercer, Al Jazeera, Lake Atitlan, Guatemala.